The diamond-encrusted envelope sat perfectly placed among the designer gift bags at my mother-in-law's 60th birthday celebration. Inside, instead of birthday wishes, were divorce papers with my forged signature and a note, "Happy birthday to me, finally getting rid of you." What Patricia Morrison didn't know was that I had been recording everything for months. Her precious son Marcus had been draining our joint accounts to fund his secret gambling addiction while she orchestrated this elaborate betrayal. As the champagne flowed and cameras flashed at the luxury venue, I smiled sweetly, knowing that in exactly 1 hour, every guest would discover the truth about this perfect family. Hey everyone! Before we dive into this incredible story of family betrayal and sweet revenge, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. This tale of mother-in-law manipulation and shocking discoveries will blow your mind. Hit that like button if you're ready for some serious family drama, and don't forget to subscribe, because trust me, you won't want to miss how this unfolds. Let's jump right into the chaos. 6 months earlier, I had been the perfect daughter-in-law. Serafina Morrison. That's what they called me after Marcus and I married 3 years ago. My real name is Serafina Blake, and I had worked my way up from a small-town waitress to a successful marketing executive in Manhattan. Patricia Morrison, however, never let me forget that I wasn't born into their world of country clubs and charity galas. The first red flag came during our anniversary dinner when Marcus excused himself to take a work call that lasted 45 minutes. The second was when I noticed our savings account had mysteriously decreased by $15,000. Marcus explained it away as a business investment, but something felt wrong. His mother's sudden interest in our marriage finances raised even more suspicions. Patricia had always been manipulative, but her behavior became increasingly aggressive. She would schedule family events during my important work presentations, claim I was too career-focused to be a good wife, and constantly hint that Marcus deserved someone from their social circle. When she started visiting our apartment unannounced and rifling through our mail, I knew something was seriously wrong. The breakthrough came when I installed a hidden camera in our home office after discovering Marcus had been lying about his whereabouts. What I captured was beyond anything I had imagined. Late one Tuesday night, Marcus sat at our kitchen table with Patricia, both hunched over financial documents and my personal papers. "The gambling debts are getting out of control," Marcus whispered, his hands shaking as he signed what appeared to be loan documents. "If Serafina finds out about Atlantic City, about the money I've borrowed against the house," Patricia's voice was cold and calculating. "That's exactly why we need to end this marriage before she discovers everything. I've already spoken with our lawyer. We can make it look like she's the one asking for divorce. Sign these papers with her name, and I'll handle the rest." I watched in horror as my husband practiced forging my signature while his mother coached him. They had been planning to destroy my life to cover up his addiction and their financial crimes. The worst part was hearing Patricia's true feelings about me. "She's always been beneath our family anyway," Patricia continued, pouring herself another glass of wine. "Some small-town nobody who got lucky. Marcus can do so much better. Jennifer Whitmore's daughter is still single, and her family has the right connections." The recording revealed everything Marcus had lost, over $200,000 gambling. Patricia had been enabling him by covering his debts with family money, and they planned to frame me for abandoning the marriage while secretly transferring all our assets into accounts I couldn't access. But what truly infuriated me was discovering that Patricia had already been spreading rumors about me in their social circle. She told their friends I was having an affair with my boss, that I was secretly planning to leave Marcus, and that I had been stealing money from joint accounts. She was systematically destroying my reputation while building a narrative that would justify their betrayal. The next few weeks were a careful dance of pretending everything was normal while I gathered evidence. I hired a private investigator who uncovered the full extent of Marcus's gambling problem and Patricia's financial manipulation. She had been using her influence to help Marcus access credit lines and loans, using our marriage as collateral, all while planning to leave me responsible for debts I never knew existed. I also discovered that Patricia had been intercepting my mail and had already filed preliminary divorce papers without my knowledge. She had connections in the legal system who were helping her manipulate the process. They planned to present me with a fait accompli at her birthday party, surrounded by their entire social circle, ensuring maximum humiliation. The private investigator also revealed that Jennifer Whitmore's daughter, Patricia's preferred replacement for me, was already being introduced to Marcus at various social events. They had been planning this replacement strategy for months, treating my marriage like a business transaction that needed to be terminated for a better deal. As I uncovered layer after layer of betrayal, I realized that Patricia's birthday party wasn't just going to be the venue for my public humiliation. It was going to be the perfect stage for their complete downfall. Every guest they invited to witness my supposed disgrace would instead witness the truth about their elaborate fraud. The most damning evidence came from Marcus's phone, which I accessed using our shared cloud account. Text messages between him and his mother revealed the complete timeline of their deception, including discussions about how to handle my emotional breakdown when I discovered the divorce papers. They had even planned fake tears and rehearsed explanations about how I had changed and become impossible to live with. Once I understood the full scope of their betrayal, I knew I needed a strategy that would expose their crimes while protecting myself legally. The evidence I had gathered was substantial, but I needed to ensure that when I revealed the truth, there would be no escape route for either Patricia or Marcus. My first step was securing my own finances. Working with a trusted attorney who specialized in fraud cases, I quietly moved my personal assets into protected accounts and documented every suspicious transaction from our joint finances. The paper trail Patricia and Marcus had created while trying to hide their crimes actually worked in my favor, providing clear evidence of financial fraud and identity theft. The attorney Rebecca Chen was brilliant and ruthless. When I showed her the recordings and financial evidence, her eyes lit up with the kind of professional satisfaction that comes from having an airtight case. "They've handed us everything we need," she said, reviewing the documents. "Forging your signature, manipulating financial accounts, conspiracy to commit fraud. This is going to be a prosecutor's dream." But Rebecca also understood my desire for something more than just legal justice. "You want them to face consequences in their own social world too," she observed. "Legal justice is one thing, but social consequences in their circle might be just as devastating." That's when we devised the perfect plan. Instead of confronting them privately or through legal channels first, we would let them execute their scheme exactly as planned, but with some crucial modifications that would turn their public victory into their complete destruction. I started attending Patricia's party planning meetings, playing the role of the unsuspecting daughter-in-law, helping to organize her milestone celebration. Patricia was particularly excited about the guest list, which included everyone from their country club, Marcus's business associates, prominent local socialites, and even a few local news reporters who covered society events. "I want this to be absolutely perfect," Patricia told me during one planning session, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "A celebration that everyone will remember forever." She had no idea how prophetic those words would be. Working with Rebecca, I arranged for several key people to be present at the party. A forensic accountant who could verify financial crimes in real time, a private investigator who had documented everything, and most importantly, a process server who would be ready with real legal documents, not the fraudulent ones Patricia had prepared. I also reached out to Marcus's siblings who had been kept in the dark about their brother's gambling addiction and their mother's schemes. When I showed them the evidence privately, their shock and anger were immediate. Patricia had been using family money to enable Marcus's addiction while lying to everyone about where the money was going. "She told us she was helping you and Marcus buy a bigger house," his sister Amanda said, her voice filled with betrayal. "She's been taking money from Dad's trust fund and lying to all of us." Amanda and her brother David agreed to help expose the truth, not just to protect the family's remaining assets, but because they were disgusted by how Patricia had manipulated everyone. They had always suspected their mother's treatment of me was unfair, but discovering the extent of her deception and Marcus's weakness made them realize how toxic the family dynamic had become. The most crucial element of my plan involved the birthday party's entertainment. Patricia had hired a professional videographer to document the celebration planning to capture what she thought would be my public humiliation. Instead, I arranged for the videographer to be someone who worked with Rebecca's firm, ensuring that everything would be properly documented for legal purposes. I also prepared a comprehensive presentation that laid out the entire conspiracy in clear, undeniable terms. Financial records, recorded conversations, forged documents, and testimonies from witnesses would be presented to the guests in a way that left no room for denial or explanation. But perhaps the most satisfying part of my preparation was watching Patricia and Marcus continue their charade completely unaware that I knew everything. Marcus became increasingly nervous as the party approached, clearly struggling with guilt about what they planned to do. Patricia, however, seemed to relish the anticipation of what she saw as her final victory over me. During our last pre-party planning meeting, Patricia actually had the audacity to give me advice about moving forward after difficult life changes. "Sometimes, Serafina," she said with fake sympathy, "we have to accept that things don't work out the way we hoped. The important thing is to handle disappointment with grace and dignity." I smiled and nodded, knowing that in just a few days she would need to follow her own advice about handling disappointment. The trap was set, the evidence was overwhelming, and justice was finally within reach. The morning of Patricia's birthday party, I woke up with the kind of calm that comes from knowing you hold all the cards. Marcus was already gone, having left early to help his mother with last-minute arrangements. What he was actually doing was finalizing their plan to present me with divorce papers in front of their entire social circle. I had spent weeks perfecting my appearance for this moment. The designer dress I chose was elegant but powerful, deep navy blue with clean lines that commanded respect. Patricia had always made subtle comments about my fashion choices, suggesting I didn't understand their social expectations. Today, I would look every inch the successful woman I had worked to become, not the small-town nobody she wanted everyone to see. The venue Patricia had chosen was the Grandview Country Club's Crystal Ballroom, a space that screamed old money and social status. She had spared no expense hiring the city's most exclusive catering company, bringing in orchid arrangements that cost more than most people's monthly rent, and even arranging for a string quartet to provide background music. What Patricia didn't know was that I had been quietly reaching out to several guests over the past few weeks, not to warn them about what was coming, but to plant seeds of doubt about the financial irregularities I had accidentally discovered. Mrs. Whitmore, whose daughter was being positioned as my replacement, had already started asking uncomfortable questions about why Marcus suddenly seemed so interested in their family. The private investigator Rebecca had hired discovered that Patricia's manipulation went far beyond just my marriage. She had been embezzling money from the charity organizations where she served on boards, using her social status to cover up financial discrepancies. The country club itself was owed significant money from events Patricia had organized, but never fully paid for, always promising that the family would handle it later. As I arrived at the party, I was struck by how perfect everything looked on the surface. Patricia had created an impressive facade of success and sophistication. Guests in designer clothing mingled elegantly, servers passed champagne and caviar, and everything sparkled under the crystal chandeliers. It was exactly the kind of setting where Patricia felt most powerful, surrounded by the social hierarchy she had spent decades climbing. Marcus spotted me immediately, and his face went pale. Over the past few weeks, his guilt had been eating at him, and seeing me looking confident and beautiful clearly rattled him. He approached nervously, his hands shaking slightly as he kissed my cheek in greeting. You look amazing tonight," he stammered, unable to meet my eyes. "Thank you, darling," I replied sweetly, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "I wanted to look my best for your mother's special day. After all, this is going to be a night none of us will ever forget." The irony in my words was completely lost on him, but I could see his anxiety increasing. He kept glancing toward his mother, who was holding court near the gift table where my surprise was waiting among the other presents. I made my rounds through the party greeting guests with the perfect smile and gracious conversation that Patricia had always claimed I lacked. Several people commented on how radiant I looked, how successful my career was going, and how lucky Marcus was to have me. Each compliment felt like a small victory, knowing that Patricia's narrative about my inadequacy was about to crumble completely. The moment I had been waiting for came when Patricia clinked her champagne glass to call for everyone's attention. The room fell silent as she prepared to deliver what she thought would be the perfect culmination of her scheme. "My dear friends," Patricia began, her voice carrying the practiced authority of someone accustomed to commanding attention. "Thank you all for joining me on this milestone birthday. Reaching 60 has given me perspective on what truly matters in life: family loyalty and the courage to face difficult truths." She paused dramatically, her eyes scanning the room before landing on me with what she thought was sympathetic concern. "Sometimes, as those who love us, know we must make painful decisions for the greater good of our families. Tonight, I want to share something that has been weighing heavily on my heart." The room was completely silent, guests leaning forward with the kind of anticipation that comes from sensing drama about to unfold. Patricia was clearly savoring the moment, believing she was about to deliver the devastating blow she had planned for months. "My son Marcus and his wife Serafina have been struggling with some very serious issues in their marriage," she continued, her voice taking on a tone of false sadness. "As a mother, it breaks my heart to see my child suffering in silence, trying to protect someone who has been, well, let's just say not entirely honest about her intentions." I could feel the eyes of every guest turning toward me, waiting to see how I would react to this public humiliation. Marcus looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor, his face red with embarrassment and guilt. Patricia, however, was clearly enjoying every second of what she believed was my downfall. "In fact," Patricia continued, reaching for the diamond-encrusted envelope on the gift table, "I think it's time for some honesty in this family. Serafina, darling, this is for you." She handed me the envelope with a smile that was pure malice disguised as concern. The entire room watched in fascination as I opened it, expecting to see me crumble as I discovered the divorce papers and her cruel note. Instead, I read the contents calmly, my expression never changing. Then I looked up at Patricia with a smile that made her confidence falter slightly. "Thank you, Patricia," I said clearly, my voice carrying to every corner of the silent room. "This is exactly what I was hoping for tonight. You've given me the perfect opportunity to share some truths of my own." I walked over to where the videographer was set up and nodded slightly. Rebecca Chen stepped out from behind a pillar where she had been waiting, followed by the forensic accountant and private investigator I had arranged to have present. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced, my voice steady and strong, "before we continue with this wonderful celebration, I think you all deserve to know the real story behind this generous gift." Patricia's face went white as she realized something had gone terribly wrong with her plan. Marcus looked like he might faint, and every guest in the room leaned forward with the kind of intense attention that comes from realizing they were about to witness something extraordinary. The trap had been sprung, and there was no escape route left for the people who had tried to destroy my life. The silence in the crystal ballroom was deafening as I held up the forged divorce papers for everyone to see. Patricia's perfectly orchestrated party was about to become her complete undoing. "These divorce papers," I announced clearly, "contain my forged signature. But that's just the beginning of what Patricia Morrison and her son have been hiding from all of you." Rebecca stepped forward with a tablet displaying financial records on the large screen that had been set up for Patricia's birthday slideshow. Instead of family photos and heartfelt memories, the guests were now seeing bank statements, gambling receipts, and loan documents. "Over the past 8 months," I continued, "Marcus has lost over $200,000 gambling in Atlantic City. To cover his debts, he and his mother have been systematically draining our joint accounts, forging my signature on loan documents, and using money stolen from family trust funds and charity organizations." The room erupted in shocked whispers. Mrs. Whitmore, whose daughter Patricia had been grooming as my replacement, stepped closer to examine the evidence. Her face transformed from confusion to disgust as she realized the extent of the deception. "That's impossible." Patricia finally found her voice, but it came out as a desperate shriek rather than her usual commanding tone. "This is all lies. She's making this up because she knows Marcus is leaving her. Actually," Rebecca interjected professionally, "we have recorded conversations of you and Marcus planning this entire scheme." She pressed play on a small speaker, and suddenly the room was filled with Patricia's voice from my hidden camera recordings. "Sign these papers with her name, and I'll handle the rest." Patricia's recorded voice echoed through the ballroom. "She's always been beneath our family anyway, some small-town nobody who got lucky." The effect was immediate and devastating. Guests who had been Patricia's friends for decades stared at her with horror and betrayal. The charity board members present looked physically sick as they realized the implications for their organizations. Marcus tried to run, actually pushing through the crowd toward the exit, but the private investigator I had hired was blocking the door with legal documents. "Marcus Morrison, you're being served with papers for fraud, forgery, and identity theft," he announced loud enough for everyone to hear. "The gambling debts are getting out of control." Marcus's voice now played from the recording. "If Serafina finds out about Atlantic City, about the money I've borrowed against the house." Patricia's carefully constructed social empire was collapsing in real time. Mrs. Henderson from the country club board stepped forward with fury in her eyes. "Patricia, you told us that missing charity money was an accounting error. You've been stealing from children's cancer research. And you," Mrs. Whitmore turned to Marcus with contempt, "have been courting my daughter while planning to divorce your wife for money. Did you really think we wouldn't find out?" The forensic accountant began presenting a detailed breakdown of the financial crimes. Patricia had embezzled over $100,000 from 3 different charity organizations, always using her social status and family connections to avoid scrutiny. Marcus had forged my signature on loan applications totaling nearly $500,000, putting our home and my personal assets at risk without my knowledge. But the most damning revelation came when Rebecca displayed text messages between Patricia and a lawyer who had been helping them manipulate legal documents. They had planned to have me declared mentally incompetent if I tried to fight the divorce using manufactured evidence of emotional instability. "This is insane," Patricia screamed, her composure completely shattered. "You're all believing a vindictive little nobody over a family that has contributed to this community for generations." Her words only made things worse. The mask had completely fallen away, revealing the ugly prejudice and entitlement that had always driven her hatred of me. Guests who had known Patricia for years were seeing her true character for the first time. David and Amanda Morrison. Marcus's siblings stepped forward to address the crowd. David's voice was filled with pain and anger as he spoke. "Our mother has been lying to our entire family. She told us she was helping Marcus and Serafina buy a house. Instead, she's been enabling his gambling addiction and destroying innocent people's lives." "We had no idea about any of this," Amanda added, tears in her eyes. "We thought Serafina was part of our family. Finding out that our mother has been planning to destroy her while stealing from charities and lying to all of us, it's heartbreaking." The videographer continued recording everything, ensuring that Patricia's social humiliation would be as thoroughly documented as her legal downfall. Several guests were already taking photos and videos with their phones, guaranteeing that the story would spread throughout their social circle within hours. Marcus made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation. "This is all my fault," he called out, his voice breaking. "Serafina didn't do anything wrong. I have a problem, and I dragged my mother into it. Please don't blame her for my mistakes." But it was too late for damage control. The evidence was overwhelming, and Patricia's own words had revealed the malicious intent behind their scheme. The private investigator handed Marcus additional legal documents while Rebecca served Patricia with papers for embezzlement, conspiracy to commit fraud, and identity theft. "The district attorney's office will be filing formal charges next week," Rebecca announced to the room. "The evidence is comprehensive and undeniable." As security arrived to escort Patricia and Marcus from the venue, Patricia made one final attempt at manipulation. "This is all a misunderstanding," she pleaded with her former friends. "You've known me for years. You know what kind of person I am." "Yes," Mrs. Henderson replied coldly. "We're finally seeing exactly what kind of person you are." The crystal ballroom that had been decorated for a celebration of Patricia's life had become the stage for her complete destruction. Her reputation, her social standing, her family relationships, and her freedom were all crumbling simultaneously in front of everyone she had tried to impress. The aftermath of Patricia's birthday party was swift and merciless. Within 24 hours, the story had spread throughout their entire social circle, amplified by social media and the local news outlets that had been invited to cover what they thought would be a typical society celebration. The country club's board of directors held an emergency meeting the next morning. Patricia's membership was revoked immediately, and they announced a full audit of all charity events she had organized over the past 5 years. The scope of her embezzlement was even larger than we had initially discovered. Marcus was arrested at his apartment 2 days later, still in the clothes he had worn to flee the party. The police found evidence of additional gambling debts and discovered he had been using company credit cards for personal expenses, adding corporate fraud to his growing list of charges. The legal proceedings moved quickly once the district attorney's office reviewed the evidence Rebecca had compiled. Patricia's lawyer, the one who had been helping her manipulate documents, was also charged with conspiracy and faced disbarment proceedings. The web of corruption Patricia had created to maintain her lifestyle was unraveling completely. What surprised me most was how many people came forward once the truth was revealed. Other charity organizations reported suspicious financial irregularities they had attributed to honest mistakes. Country club members shared stories of Patricia's manipulative behavior that they had previously dismissed as harmless gossip. Mrs. Whitmore publicly apologized to me at the grocery store, tears in her eyes as she explained how Patricia had been poisoning their social circle against me for months. She told us you were unstable, that you were jealous of Marcus's success, that you were planning to take his money and disappear, she said. We should have questioned her stories instead of just believing them. The media attention was intense, but ultimately positive. Local news outlets covered the story as an example of how financial crimes can hide behind social respectability. Several victims of similar charity fraud cases reached out to thank me for having the courage to expose Patricia's schemes. David and Amanda Morrison became unexpected allies in seeking justice for their family's victims. They worked with prosecutors to recover as much stolen money as possible and helped identify additional financial crimes their mother had committed. Amanda told me privately that she felt like she was finally meeting the real me for the first time without Patricia's manipulation coloring every interaction. "I'm so sorry we didn't see what she was doing to you," Amanda said during one of our conversations. "Looking back, every negative thing we knew about you came directly from her. She was so convincing, so certain that you were wrong for our family." The divorce proceedings became a formality once Marcus pleaded guilty to fraud charges. With his criminal conviction and the evidence of financial abuse, I was able to recover all marital assets and avoid any responsibility for his gambling debts. The house we had shared was sold, and I used the proceeds to start fresh in a new apartment closer to my work. Patricia's sentencing hearing was held 6 months after her birthday party. The prosecutor presented victim impact statements from multiple charity organizations detailing how her theft had affected programs for children, elderly people, and families in crisis. The judge sentenced her to 4 years in prison and ordered full restitution to all victims. Marcus received 2 years in prison and 5 years probation with mandatory gambling addiction treatment. During his sentencing, he finally apologized publicly for the harm he had caused, though his words felt hollow after months of lies and manipulation. The most satisfying moment came when I received a formal letter from the country club inviting me to rejoin as an independent member and asking if I would consider serving on their charity oversight committee. They wanted to implement new safeguards to prevent the kind of fraud Patricia had perpetrated. My career flourished in the aftermath of the scandal. Standing up to powerful people who tried to destroy me had earned respect from colleagues and clients who valued integrity over social connections. The marketing firm where I worked promoted me to senior partner, recognizing both my professional skills and the strength of character I had demonstrated. The civil lawsuit I filed against Patricia and Marcus resulted in a substantial settlement that covered all legal expenses and compensated me for the emotional distress of their betrayal. Patricia's assets, including jewelry and artwork she had purchased with stolen money, were liquidated to pay her victims. But perhaps the most meaningful outcome was the relationships I built with people who had witnessed the truth unfold at that birthday party. Many guests reached out to apologize for believing Patricia's lies and to express admiration for how I had handled such a difficult situation. Mrs. Henderson, the charity board member, became a genuine friend and mentor. She helped me understand that Patricia's behavior was part of a pattern of manipulation that had been affecting their social circle for years, but nobody had ever challenged her directly. "You did what none of us had the courage to do," she told me. "You stood up to someone who seemed untouchable and proved that actions have consequences no matter how well connected someone thinks they are." The house of cards Patricia had built through decades of manipulation and financial crime had completely collapsed, and the ripple effects continued for months as investigators uncovered more victims and more schemes. Her name became synonymous with charity fraud in our city, a cautionary tale about how social status can be used to mask criminal behavior. A year later, as I sat in my new apartment overlooking the city skyline, I reflected on how completely my life had transformed. The woman who had walked into that birthday party carrying evidence of betrayal was stronger, wiser, and surrounded by genuine relationships built on truth rather than social manipulation. Patricia was serving her prison sentence, reportedly struggling to adapt to an environment where her name and social connections meant nothing. Marcus had been released to a halfway house and was working in a restaurant kitchen, finally facing the consequences of his addiction and the harm it had caused. The charity organizations that had been victims of Patricia's fraud had not only recovered their stolen funds, but had implemented new oversight procedures that would protect them from future exploitation. Several had invited me to join their boards, recognizing that someone who had fought fraud deserved a voice in preventing it. My relationship with David and Amanda Morrison had evolved into a genuine friendship. We met monthly for dinner, sharing stories about rebuilding trust after family betrayal and supporting each other through the ongoing legal proceedings. They had both cut contact with Patricia, choosing to focus on healing and moving forward. "You saved our family from continuing down a destructive path," David had told me recently. "If you hadn't exposed the truth, who knows how many more people would have been hurt." The professional success that followed my public stand against Patricia exceeded anything I had achieved before. Companies wanted to work with someone who had demonstrated integrity under pressure, and I found myself consulting on ethics and fraud prevention for businesses across the region. But the most important transformation was personal. I had learned to trust my instincts to value authentic relationships over social status, and to understand that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's destructive behavior. The small-town waitress Patricia had dismissed as beneath their family had become a respected businesswoman and advocate for fraud victims. Her attempts to destroy me had instead revealed my strength and resilience in ways I never could have discovered otherwise. I also learned valuable lessons about the difference between family by blood and family by choice. Marcus's siblings had chosen to support what was right rather than what was convenient. My colleagues had rallied around me when the truth came out. My real friends had never believed Patricia's lies in the first place. The legal system had worked exactly as it was supposed to, but only because I had been willing to document everything and fight for justice rather than quietly accepting abuse. Too many people suffer in silence when powerful individuals manipulate systems to avoid consequences for their actions. My new life was built on foundations of honesty, hard work, and genuine connections. I had learned that respect earned through integrity was far more valuable than acceptance gained through submission to manipulation. The woman Patricia had tried to destroy no longer existed, replaced by someone stronger and more confident in her own worth. The country club where Patricia had once held court now welcomed me as a leader rather than an outsider. The same social circle that had witnessed my supposed humiliation now looked to me as an example of how to handle adversity with grace and determination. But perhaps the most satisfying change was how I had transformed Patricia's intended moment of triumph into a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked privilege and entitlement. Her birthday party had indeed become unforgettable, just not in the way she had planned. As I finished writing in my journal that evening, I realized that Patricia had actually given me an incredible gift, though certainly not the one she had intended. Her attempt to destroy me had forced me to discover reserves of strength and courage I never knew I possessed. The divorce papers in that diamond-encrusted envelope had been meant to end my life as I knew it. Instead, they had marked the beginning of a life far better than anything I could have imagined while trapped in a marriage built on lies and a family system founded on manipulation. Have you ever experienced family betrayal that forced you to discover your own strength? Sometimes the people who try to destroy us actually set us free. Drop a comment sharing your own story of standing up to manipulation or finding justice when it seemed impossible. Your experience might inspire someone else who's facing similar challenges. If this story of family karma and sweet revenge resonated with you, smash that like button and subscribe for more tales of justice served and lessons learned. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear that they're stronger than the people trying to tear them down. Thank you for joining me on this journey from betrayal to victory. Remember, the truth always finds a way to surface, and sometimes the most beautiful revenge is simply living well and refusing to let toxic people define your worth. Here's to chosen family, hard-won wisdom, and the sweet satisfaction of watching karma work its magic. Until next time, keep fighting for your truth, and never let anyone convince you that you deserve less than respect and honesty.